members of Congress. Smith's attorneys say this all shows a, quote, chilling eagerness to weaponize the justice system. With us now is Congressman Dave Min, a Democrat from California, an attorney by training. Congressman, good to see you this morning. I just want to go over the substance of what Chairman Jordan is suggesting here that Jack Smith did in his testimony. He was asked during the deposition, quote, okay, did the toll records you requested from the senators, did they include the content of the phone calls? Jack Smith responded, no. Did the records that you requested, the toll records from the member of 11 Congress, include the context of text messages? He responded, no. Now, what this has to do with is, again, phone records, literal toll records that he did subpoena. That's just data of who called whom. That did not have the content. However, he did see the content of some of these calls in other records he obtained, that from the National Archives. So you're training as a lawyer. Do you think this constitutes perjury?
I would have to look at, and thanks for having me on, John, I'd have to look at the specific back and forth. Perjury implies and requires a certain intent to mislead. Here, I think what you're describing and what we've seen is that Jack Smith is trying to answer honestly. Perhaps there's a little confusion between the records obtained from the National Archives and directly from the phone companies. But this points to a broader problem right now that we're seeing. Jack Smith is being told he cannot release the details of the investigation, what he found, right? And so they're going after him. They're weaponizing the DOJ, even as they are not allowing him to release the results of what apparently very damning results here. So how about if we want transparency, if we want to say that Jack Smith is lying, why don't we let him release the evidence that he accumulated, testify openly and publicly, which I think is what he's been requesting, on what the Republicans have been doing, and Jim Jordan in particular. They've been conducting a shadow hearing, like closed doors, not allowing him to be fully transparent about what he did and what he uncovered. This is kabuki theater of the worst kind, and again, very clearly they're weaponizing the DOJ here.
The president put out a statement on social media after this apparent announcement, and it just said, justice at last, question mark, question mark, question mark. So what does the fact that he's weighing in on this, what does that tell you?
Well, let's be clear. At this point, Donald Trump's conception of justice is very different than anybody else I've ever encountered in my life. People who want justice, and I came here to talk about the Epstein files. Let's look at that as a counterexample. We want justice there. We want transparency. We want actual criminals who traffic girls for decades to be held accountable. And Trump's DOJ, his personal attorney, former personal attorney Todd Blanche, is obstructing that investigation. We have seen multiple people come directly to us and lie to us as members of Congress. There's been no action there, no referrals to the DOJ, even though people are very clearly lying. So where is the justice there, and why is there this double standard for Donald Trump and his Epstein elite, the people that are rich and powerful and friends of his? Why do they get one standard of justice and everyone else is subject to this heightened scrutiny?
Your colleague, Jamie Raskin, a Democrat, has suggested there should be an investigation into whether or not Jeffrey Epstein was some kind of a foreign agent, had foreign ties. J.D. Vance, as part of his Joe Rogan interview, was floating the notion that he had ties to Mossad, noting that it was out there. How valid of an investigation, how much emphasis do you think should be placed on this?
We have been told that, and I know that some of the attorneys have told us that they believe there were some ties. I think at one point I was told that Jeffrey Epstein's personal bodyguard said that, quote, whenever somebody senior from one of three governments, Saudi Arabia, Israel, or Russia, would call, that Jeffrey Epstein would drop everything he was doing and jump on a plane to go meet them. The bodyguard didn't know what they discussed, but that seems very potentially problematic. And yeah, it does get to a bigger problem with the Epstein investigation. Where are the bank records? That could help us understand, the financial flows. Millions and millions of dollars went out to these girls. Jeffrey Epstein, of course, trafficked billions of dollars. Where did that money come from? Where did it end up going? We don't have that information. We'd love to see the rest of the Epstein files, the millions of documents that the Department of Justice is withholding right now from us, despite a valid subpoena. So I can't tell you if he had ties to any foreign agencies. What I do know is there's been credible allegations made, and we are not digging into that.